Hello and welcome to a new episode of Morgana Radio, where I, your host, Morgana Ray, interview the world's most fascinating thought leaders on money, love, and magic. And today's guest is totally different from anybody that I've had on the show before. She is way, way, way over in the magic side of things. Really fun, very, very woo-woo, and yet as with anybody that I bring here, really, really accomplished with tangible real world results. In fact, Lorrie Kazan was chosen as one of the top psychics in a worldwide audition for the Edgar Cayce Institute and the Association for Research and Enlightenment. She is particularly known for her skills in telepathy, clairaudience, clairsentience, and clairvoyance. Lorrie also holds a master's degree in writing, and she regularly lectures on tarot, shamanism, psychic development, past lives, and dream interpretation. Her work has appeared in a number of different magazines, and she is I've known her for almost 15 years now, and the things she knows really kind of spooky. So I highly recommend. The topic of today's interview is prosperity from the inside out, living a magical life. And we're going to be diving into how to change your thoughts, how to work with universal laws, and authenticity to create real magic instead of some cheap sleight of hand. Also, I'm going to share with you great resources that she is offering to our audience. All downloads will be available at morganaradio.com. But this is going to be a fun, super magical show. I have no idea what's going to come up. So welcome, Lorrie.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. My cat is, I think, joining us, depending how she feels in the moment. That's Allie.
For those of you who are listening in on iTunes, you can also catch the video at morganaradio.com. And of course, all of the downloads and gifts that we discuss over the next 30 minutes will be available there. So, Lorrie, you do spiritual counseling as well as psychic reading. What's the difference? What's the overlap between the two?
Well, I think the overlap has to do with creating our future. So a lot of times people just want to know, tell me what's going to happen, and you can see that what's going to happen perhaps is not what they truly want. You're going to see my cat now in this shot. You're going to see that what's going to happen may be something where, like, don't go in that direction. So in terms of spiritual counseling, it's also honing in on a person. When I do a reading, for instance, I will have someone say their name. Just say your name a couple times, and what I do is I kind of hone into the energy. That's my gardeners in the background. Hone into the energy and look at, who is this person? What did they come in for, and are they seeing it? So the spiritual counseling may be suggesting certain things that you can do in your life to create the kind of future that you want. Certain shifts you can even make in your own consciousness.
What kind of problems do people usually come to you for?
Anything from, I can't find my keys, which please don't come to me for that, but I can't find my keys, to often I get, is he going to call? Am I ever going to find love? Very much about love and connection. Is he cheating? You notice I say he a lot. I do have men calling, but it's more women than men.
Mm-hmm.
And it's often somebody's usually in pain. Sometimes it's, how do I become more spiritual or more psychic myself? But it's usually about a pain that someone has.
And also, I know you have some money stories too, where people have come to you with questions about business.
Yeah, a lot of times what I do is I prepare people. One of the questions I get is my business going to make money? A lot of times people are living in poverty, or we accept poverty and we don't even realize that we're living in it. Like this world is this banquet, and we've gotten so used to having things tight or small. And so that's, again, gets into the spiritual counseling. because we have this huge palette of skills, and you can always build that palette. So you asked me about money. For instance, one of my testimonials is from a doctor who asked me about, a lot of times doctors really want to invest, maybe it's for whatever reason in other businesses, and he asked me about several different investments, and each of them just said no. For every no, there's a better yes. And sometimes people want something the same way. We want it right now. We don't want to wait for that better yes. Anyway, he had some sure things. Absolutely, I was the only one. Everybody else says they can't miss. And his testimonial to me is, oh God, my biggest regret is not listening to you. Because I can't always explain why, but I can see, don't go in that direction. But we all make mistakes, and his were very costly mistakes.
So what is intuition, and how do you tap into it?
I think intuition is like our personal guidance system. I think there's some differences between ESP and intuition. So Edgar Cayce, the most documented psychic in history, talked about intuition being actually better in some ways than ESP. ESP would be, give me a sealed envelope and I'm going to draw the picture of what's inside the envelope without being able to see it. I mean, that's, we can all practice those skills, and there's classes, they're usually called remote viewing for that, and we can do that. But intuition is that guidance system that says, it may say to you, I don't know why I don't want you to invest this money in this person, but don't do it. And, intuition can say you're driving along and it says, don't go down that road. Or I was in a really serious car accident when I was young, and the person who was driving the car that night, he kept saying, come on, just go out with me. And in my mind, I kept saying, no, no, no. And then I just went, okay, I'll go one last time. And that's what, wants me to do this work today, so I could say to somebody, yes, when you don't people please, people are not pleased, but don't go that last, the last time was the last time for a long time.
Thank you. Because I know you teach psychic development, tarot, shamanism. How did you get into all of this?
I was and am, but more so before I started doing this work, a highly sensitive person. So I was one of those people where, oh, you're too sensitive. Oh, we don't see what you see. We don't know why you're so, shut up, basically.
Why are you so difficult?
Yeah, why are you so difficult? And it was hard for me to be in the world. I would pick up on things and it would be like, are these my feelings? Are these their feelings? Or sometimes I remember somebody that I later became madly in love with. When I first met him, I said something to him about me when he asked me, and I thought, why on earth did I ever say that? Even as it was coming out of my mouth. And as I got to know him later, I was talking for him. That was true about him. It wasn't true about me. So I was then studied at early 90s. I was part of a group called Battered Boundaries that was studied by the Association for Research and Enlightenment to find out why some of us were picking up on all this stuff that was none of our business. And none of us in that study had worked as psychics or thought they were going to work as psychics. I always studied and took care of sort of the psychic side of my life, because my goal was to be a writer and to be this and to be that. And in order to maintain living in those creative, in those worlds, I felt like I really needed to protect myself psychically and become attuned, and just that high level of sensitivity that was not of this world, which is frequently what people said to me. You're like a princess. You're like something out of this world.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of how I started. Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah.
Remember what you
I
asked
will know how you got into that, and I find that fascinating. And really, for anybody listening or watching, if you are highly sensitive, that's not a bad thing. That's a gift.
It's tough.
Yeah.
It's a gift. Somebody I remember years ago, this counselor said to me, she said, it's like you have this huge ship and you're learning how to steer it. And when I was studied by the ARE for the Battered Boundaries, one of the things that they said was if you start using this, really start owning the psychic side of yourself, then you won't pick up on so much random stuff because you're going to be directed. And there was a thought there's the thought of a sort of a Jungian idea, and this is where we get into the psychological and with the psychic, is that everything that happens is talking to you. So when you start having a lot of similar incidences, what's being shown? What can there's things we can make it mean, but it's like paying attention to our own lives. And those things that are our greatest pains usually are also our greatest gifts, but sometimes we have to work at it.
I agree. So some of our audience may be wondering, okay, so why did I invite her on a money show? But I've been subscribing to your newsletter for a gazillion years, and the theme is very heavy into prosperity. That's your thing. And so you offered to teach us today a class on prosperity from the inside out, living a magical life. And the first piece of that is changing your thoughts. So how do you recommend we change our thoughts?
Well, I have a book, and my free gift to your audience is a portion of that book. So I hear clicking. Is that, I don't know, maybe it's because we're moving around.
But, I'm not hearing it. Okay. I don't know.
And now I've talked about it. Sorry, audience. Authenticity is the core of what I'm going to talk about. So authenticity, dealing with shame, all of that stuff. How I got into prosperity myself is I was broke. I was part of the wonderful artists, writers, psychics who never had any money. And there were those other people who had it. And I had money when I was quite young. My parents had it and lost it. And, I liked having it a whole lot better than I liked life without it. I mean,
amazing. Yes. Go.
I don't want to be owned by it.
Yeah.
And I don't need all this. But, there's a time where you even need to kind of play with the universal laws, work on everything. So how I got into that, I wanted love and I wanted money. And I didn't have much of either one. So I didn't have anything to lose by starting to play in the area of universal law. And by that, I mean, science of mind there was that thing called The Secret that came out, and she took science of mind principles. There was nothing new about it, but, as you and I know, there were certain parts left out about it, about action and things like that. But for me, it was like representing, again, sort of touching on psychology, representing the feminine principle, which is I don't have to run after and chase after things. People, places, things, like I have a higher power, whatever that is. I knew a woman who used to say, I don't care if you pray to your shoe, just find something you can make a power greater than yourself. And for me, it was literally moving it from being my smartest thinking, being the smartest in the room, and saying, okay, I've hit up against a wall. I want more, and I don't know how to get it. And I don't see even a role model for what I want. But I was injured, and I had next to no money, so I wanted cash. That was a clear want. Wherever any of us is, when you have a clear want, it can be a table, it can be a new pen, anything. You can start visualizing and working with it. Well, for me at that time, I didn't even care about money in the bank. I would just sit on the bed where I was staying, and I would picture stacks and stacks of green money because I didn't have it and I wanted it. And I would just say, money comes to me from sources known and unknown. I have lots and lots of money. And it was ironic because when I did finally deal with my injuries and got a job, I was paid in cash. And I'd never been paid in cash before. And I started to have some money, literally like I had pictured. And then I could move on to the next thing.
What are these universal laws?
Well, the universal law is, my source is, you can call it God, the universe, creator, something, that there's this force greater than myself. And for me, it was also saying there's a justice greater than myself. And so whatever my baggage about You can clear out the psychology. What do I think people with money, what do I think about them? Whatever. But the universal law is first give to God, universe, some spiritual place, then give to yourself, then give to others. So I always say to people, especially if their money's really stuck or things are stuck in their life, even give $1 to some somewhere that you find that's spiritually nourishing to you. I often give to animal resources, but and that would be technically in universal laws, that's not a spiritual thing, but
how can it not be?
Directly. Well, I know one time I had a client who, after I sort of taught her that, she called me and she wanted to give the money to me. Now, as much as I'd love to take more money, morally it wasn't. I just asked her to look at where spiritually, even though she saw it as me, I couldn't justify it, but for her to, if she were a member of a church or yes, for me it's animals. That's one of the places. And
sentient beings. It's kindness. It's compassion. That is the essence of spirituality, I believe. Go with your gut, which leads us to authenticity. But before we jump into that, you said something that I think is really, really important. Like, I hadn't heard this before, but it really rings true for me, is believe in a justice greater than yourself. Because I believe that all of our issues with money are really our issues with life. If the world does not feel safe and loving, our experience of money is not going to be safe and loving. Yeah. So getting into relationship with a friendly world makes the money come a lot more easily.
Yeah, I think it's Jack Canfield who talks about, he's the opposite of a pessimist, believe that, and those are some of my affirmations because I get scared a lot. I'm highly sensitive. Things affect me, people's thoughts. But, when I got up this morning, I just started saying these affirmations. And you can say, oh, affirmations. I tried that. But, we've got so much negative, I don't know what you want to call it, tropes or ideas or stuff people have given to us. And especially right now with these elections, everybody's at each other's throats. We don't realize how much we're being manipulated and that our thoughts that we think are original thoughts are just reiterations of something else. So this morning when I got up, I started saying, it's a beautiful day. I'm open to all the good that wants to come my way.
Beautiful.
Because, before the mind starts saying, the what ifs. And for your listeners, one of the things I would say to them is notice when you get into the what if, generally you've gone down the path of a conversation for negativity because we always scare ourselves. What if this terrible thing happens? If you're going to do what if somebody comes and gives me $1 million? What if something good happens? What if I have everything I need just for today?
Yeah, why not rehearse for success?
Yeah.
So how does all this tie into authenticity? Why is that important?
I think because there needs to be, it's like the signal that we send out into the universe is, I would rather that mine were congruent. And by congruent, I mean my unconscious and my conscious, which the unconscious is the thing there's a famous quote by Emerson, something to do with the effect of what you are stands over you and shouts so loudly that I cannot hear what you're saying to the contrary. And I love that quote because have you ever heard people telling you, I remember this guy I knew and he was like, I'm a wild guy, I'm wild and crazy and fun. And he was a very uptight, like he was the opposite of that.
Or that guy who was just saying what a great temperament he has, like he has the best temperament in the world.
Yeah, because in my personal system, that's who I am.
Yeah.
And so the congruence, I didn't want to be that person.
Yeah.
I didn't want everybody snickering in the background going, oh, look who she thinks she is. And so that congruence is also digging into the psychology of our lives. I mean, it doesn't have to be this horrible, oh, I got to dig deep and be miserable. There's ways to play with it and stuff like that. But the congruence is the more we bring to our consciousness of who we are, the less we have to meet it as our fate, or you have those hard lessons. One of the lessons for me when I got in the car that night of that accident, oh, okay, I'll just go one more time. And I could look back all the times I said, why didn't you follow your intuition? Well,
Mm.
I don't know. His voice, because somebody else wanted something from me and it was louder than the voice of intuition, which sometimes is kind of soft and it doesn't always have good reasons. Well, why don't you want to get in the car? Well, and as women, I don't know for men in your audience, maybe it's true for them as well, but anyone sensitive, we're taught to just shut up and, prove it. Prove it. Put it on a scale and make me believe what you see.
Mm.
And that's part of why I look at prosperity a little differently, and I think a little more like you do. I've used your quotes in my newsletter before. I was just looking at one before we started. I think I sent it to you um, because it's a reminder that there's more than one way to invite prosperity, to invite well-being into your life. There's a saying: what you fight to get, you fight to keep. And I don't want to keep fighting.
Mm. Yeah. So, what do our listeners need to know so that they can get congruent and tap into their intuition?
Stop running. Stop running. Notice your thinking. Come to me as your sidekick. But if you don't come to me, that was a terrible cheap plug. Forgive me.
Yeah.
But I told you it was going to be authentic.
Yeah.
What do they need to do to become congruent? I think it's the desire. When you start to see, I mean, if somebody, it's the pain. Where do you have your most pain? That's the area you're going to have your greatest growth and breakthrough. And most of us want to do anything rather than look at it. Let me get on the cell phone. Let me scroll through Facebook and let me, whatever it is, eat, drink, sex, anything rather than sit with, I don't like this. And sometimes I have to for me, I'll just say to myself, okay, that I had gone through a shattering of my leg last year, and when I'd see the cast in the morning, it was like, till I'd see it, there was the idea that I could get up and get out of bed, and then I'd see the cast, and it was like, oh yeah, another day, you can't walk, and it was like, I would have to say to myself, you just got to accept it for today. Doesn't mean you got to like it. But it was sort of a metaphor for me of those places in my life where, no, I don't want to be with it, and I make myself stop, halt, never get you hungry, angry, lonely, or tired, and those places when you're pushing, it's sort of remember, halt, and just stop. And one little easy technique: stop for 5 minutes. Time yourself on, set a timer. Don't meditate, don't do anything. Just sit for 5 minutes and see what happens.
Well, and you and I share a really deep core philosophy that you just touched on. That area of wherever that pain is that comes up has the treasure. It is the key to everything you ever really wanted. But we don't want to go there. And I'm like guilty as anybody else. And honestly, that's why coaches exist, because there are some places that really are not safe for us to go by ourselves. That's why Lorrie is here. That's why I'm here. We all need somebody to hold our hand at some point and witness us and when we go down into that scary place, to make sure we can come back.
And somebody that really sees you. It's kind of like I was saying when I do a reading, I'm looking into the core of a person.
Yeah.
Who is that person? What did they come here for? Are they experiencing it? Because it's so easy for our little chattering minds to take over and tell us we're not enough, we're not this, so having a coach or having somebody that can look at you and see you, sometimes I feel like I hold a space for somebody. It may take them a while to come up to that space, but I believe it for them and I hold it for them and they will find it. It's kind of like working on somebody's emotional blueprint.
Well, and full disclosure here, because I've never interviewed you before, I had no idea what it would be like, but I have hired you a lot of times, and not for many years, because I've been really happy, but especially during my single days, when I was really in the pain of it and the despair and just in a bad place sometimes with a broken heart. I know that calling you was like it would talk me off the edge. It would take the edge off because I felt so seen. And everything you said felt so true in my bones. It was like, oh, yeah, yeah. You know, I really feel that we can tell if we're at all sensitive. We know when somebody is telling us truth, and we know when it doesn't feel true.
Yeah, yeah. And we know that we want role models. Sometimes people use me as a role model, and I go, my professional self, and I'm not incongruent, but, in private, our private selves we're just human beings, and so everything is somewhat of a projection. But I think that people can use us as role models because we are authentic. People use Oprah as a role model, whether she had money or, but, she's somebody that speaks her truth.
So, describe living magically. What does that look and feel like?
Well, for me, a lot of times when I've been scared about money, I just start saying, money comes to me from sources known and unknown. Instead of going into, oh my God, what? Because I've noticed that there are times I start getting nervous about money. I'm a Capricorn, so Capricorn always says not enough money, not enough time. But then I'll notice I didn't even run my charges for last week. So if it's truly about money, why don't I run my charges? They're right there. So it tells me it's about something else, but I can manifest in terms. So when I start saying money comes to me, all of a sudden checks will arrive or something I wasn't expecting. It's really a nice synchronicity. So creating that. So a magical life to me is that life where you magnetize to you as opposed to, it's not that I don't do any work, but I don't go past my own borders, past what's morally correct for me. For instance, I don't take a reading like just for somebody's money. If I'm not the reader for them, I need to say it because it doesn't work for me not to. And I have to trust, that's again, that higher power, that my money's coming from a source that isn't that person. It can be channeled through that person or that job. And for all of us, it's work to, we fall off, we get back up. And so the magical life to me is one where I have lots of meaningful coincidences that I like. It's not that there isn't stuff that I don't like, but for the most part, there's a whole lot more that I like.
Beautiful. So I know you have a gift for us. Can you tell us about your gift and how that can help our viewers to start living a magical life?
Well, I channeled a book, and what is channeling? Somebody you'll see, somebody wrote, Dr. Henry Reed wrote, we have to come up with a new name because this is beyond channeling, because channeling has really gotten kind of a dusty reputation. But anyway, what it is for me is I listen to the voice of higher wisdom for my clients, for myself, and readers. I do a newsletter, and for my newsletter, and ask how can we magnetize to us what we truly want. Anyway, so I created this book, and I worked with people who were artists who our goal was to make it as beautiful, like it's a shiny gem. If you could see it in its emotional blueprint or its, whatever kind of blueprint that, in the unseen world and the seen, that you would see something that resonated out like a beautiful gem. Whether we got it or not, you can decide. But so for your listeners, what I came up with was a portion of my book specifically on prosperity and abundance and issues of that nature. And I'm sorry that my phone is ringing while I'm talking about.
I can't hear it.
Oh, you can't. Okay.
Nope.
Well, I just answered it, so. So sorry, it threw me off a little bit. So a portion of my book is in, it's ironic. The person who put it into the PDF for your listeners is the person that just called. And he's the one so you'll get a part of my book that you can look at, and it gives you some tips. And I had put the introduction, so there's some really good ideas for you. Not all of which are mine, but all of which I'll I was able to put together in the book
Right.
and credit.
And oh, it's so funny because you were just getting a phone call while you're talking about a book called Happiness Calls Your Name.
Yeah.
The
And
one
from the
minute,
person who put the PDF together and
yeah,
knew that I was in this
yeah,
series.
nothing weird there. Uh, so, yeah, it's so funny that you brought up that you're a Capricorn because you have that sort of fishy tail deep, deep, deep into the ethers and the other world, but you're also a really smart, no bullshit goat climbing the mountains in this world too. Perfect combination. So, any final words of wisdom before we sign off?
If I had my cards in front of me, I'd pull something. So let's pretend I'm going to pull a tarot card. What tarot card am I seeing? I'm seeing the Ace of Cups. And the Ace of Cups is trusting in universal love. That if you see that there's this source that loves you so much, so unconditionally. And for all of your listeners out there, they can imagine someone that they love unconditionally. For me, I don't know if my cat is showing in the picture, but she's on my lap, strangely enough, sitting quietly this whole time. But imagine that source of love and let it go through every bit of your being, because that's really who you are and it's what you want to attract. And in abundance, money is just energy. And we want to have the fluidity to do what we want to do and be loving and loved in exchange. So that's what I get, Ace of Cups.
Beautiful. Thank you. So, yeah, absolutely. Come over to morganaradio.com. Sign up for Lori's newsletter because she has gems like this, recorded meditations, beautiful quotes, inspirational prosperity pieces all the time. And download the book and get started and have a magical life. Thank you so much, Lorrie.
Thank you, Morgana. You're always a blessing.